Adam, let's transition as well to college football. You were a big part of our betting guide. Can you just, first off, just go through what the conferences you were writing this year? You wrote 49 of the 131 team previews here, and you certainly did a lot. So for the new audience this week, what all did you contribute there to the guide this year?
Yeah, it was a nice balance here. I did the SEC and the Big 12, but then I also did Conference USA and the Sun Belt. And the reality of it is, for me, I feel like on a week-to-week basis and also in the props and futures markets, there's a lot more value in the group of five. So I was very happy to write about Conference USA and the Sun Belt. But of course, SEC, Big 12, those types of conferences are the ones that everybody really wants to hear about.
So with the SEC here, as we've done these offseason previews, it's always a start at the top here with Alabama, Georgia. Is there any, at least in the actual outright markets here to win the SEC, Adam, you look at those teams at the top, Texas A&M, who's had a very adventurous offseason and bringing in a number one recruiting class and a whole lot of words coming out of College Station and Jimbo Fisher, really the only other perceived threat at 18-1. Do you feel like there is value on either of those teams at the top with a Bama laying a near $1.50 price to win or taking a shot on a Georgia there? You see on the screen the win totals are 10.5. Heavy juice to the over there. Is there a way you'd even look at playing any of these top two teams, or are they stay-offs for you this time around?
No, there's just not a whole lot of equity in these two teams. I mean, they're both going to be very significant favorites in every game here throughout the season. And in fact, you look at that Texas A&M and Alabama line in Tuscaloosa, and Crimson Tide are 17-point favorites in that game, I think. So, I have Georgia at least a 14-point favorite in every game. I think Alabama's at least a 13-point favorite in every game for me. So it's really hard to see a path where those two teams are not playing for this conference championship come the month of December. I have Georgia for 11.4 wins, Alabama for 11.37, and nobody else in this conference for more than 8.5, with Texas A&M being that team. At least the Aggies got some good news with the fact that Aeneas Smith isn't facing charges for his DUI or the weapons charge. So they had their top wide receiver back now. But, I mean, look, I have Georgia 9.5 points better on a neutral than Texas A&M, and I have Alabama 12.5 better. So it's those two teams, and there's a reason why there's no equity on them in the futures market.
When we look down the rest of the SEC, I mean, there are, we certainly know that there are some teams that have been recruiting well. There are some teams that have at least some talented players. Is there any team that you see that could possibly be any sort of surprise? Of course, the shortest shot after that would be A&M. We know about their story. They've been inside the top 6 or 7 in the recruiting rankings for about the past 5 years. So you would think that they've built up a pretty strong and deep roster there as well. Is there anybody you can see possibly making any sort of surprise?
Well, the schedule is really challenging, but I think South Carolina, because of their improved quarterback play, is a team that could end up exceeding expectations. And look, I mean, I only have them for 5.9 wins. Their season win total is either 5.5 or 6.5 with a lot of underjuice. It's a very difficult schedule for them. But if Spencer Rattler is good, and now that he's reunited with Shane Beamer, there's certainly a possibility of that. I think the Gamecocks could be a team that definitely overperforms relative to expectations. I also like Ole Miss a little bit. I don't know what Jackson Dart is going to be here for the Rebels, but I know that Lane Kiffin's a pretty good head coach. And, they're in a situation where, they are replacing their offensive coordinator, but there's a lot of talent on this team. And I think when you look at the rest of the SEC West, Arkansas has a brutal schedule. Mississippi State, with another year now of Mike Leach's system, they may be figured out a little bit. Auburn is a team that's falling off. I don't like the Auburn Tigers at all. And LSU is a giant wild card with Brian Kelly and, kind of a difficult decision for them at quarterback. So I think that Ole Miss is maybe the team that could kind of surprise a little bit there in that West Division. I think a lot of people are looking at Arkansas to be that team, but I think their schedule and the week-to-week grind is just a lot for the Razorbacks.
Well, yeah, when you look at Arkansas, Cincinnati, Liberty, at BYU, 3 of their 4 non-cons. That is a difficult schedule. And then you face the SEC West there under Sam Pittman in his 3rd year. As far as the Big 12, you mentioned that was another conference that you had the write-up on. You think about the SEC, and you just expect the domination there with those 2 teams at the top. A lot of question marks in this conference with so much change at the top, where you have Oklahoma bringing in a new coach and Brent Venables back in Norman after his stint as DC at Clemson. New quarterback situation as well after they lose their coach, Lincoln Riley, lose Caleb Williams as well to USC. Is Oklahoma to you still the rightful favorite, or are there challengers in a mix where there's 4 teams at plus 650 or shorter here with Texas, Oklahoma State, and Baylor in that conference?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's still the rightful favorite. I mean, their season win total, I know I talked about it with Tim Murray last night in the nightcap. He's got a little bit of over 9. I agree with that bet. I have Oklahoma for 9.74 wins. I think Brent Venables will do some good things with this defense. I actually really like Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. And I think if you can find a 40-1 or better out there on Dylan Gabriel to win the Heisman, that's not a bad bet because, first of all, he's a quarterback. But second, he's in a conference where they don't really play a whole lot of defense. And I would anticipate that Oklahoma State without Jim Knowles, even though they brought in Derek Mason, I could see Oklahoma State's defense falling off a little bit. Texas's defense probably still won't be very good. Baylor is a really interesting team with Dave Aranda, and I think they could be an overperformer in this conference. But I still think it's Oklahoma's to lose. And what'll be really interesting to me, outside of the top teams, TCU has a ton of talent with a very experienced head coach in Sonny Dykes. If you're looking for, to go back to what we talked about in the SEC, if you're looking for a surprise team to make a pretty big push, I think TCU may be that team.
Adam, you don't have to be limited to the SEC or the Big 12 here. Any of the conferences that you wrote up, any of the teams that you wrote up, as you were digging in, what team surprised you the most? What team, whether it was you thought way less of that team or way more of that team the more you dug in?
Well, one of the season win total best bets I have in the guide is Air Force. Air Force's season win total is 8.5. I have them projected for over 10 wins this season. I have them favored in every game that they play. So Air Force is a team that I was a little bit surprised how high I was on them. Pardon the quasi pun there. But I think the Falcons will be really, really good. I have them power rated the exact same as Fresno State, who I have down for 10 wins. So hoping that's your Mountain West championship game because I think that'll be a really good one. And the other one is South Alabama in the Sun Belt West Division. The West Division is awful. The East is stacked. App State, Coastal, Marshall, Old Dominion, James Madison, Georgia State. The East Division of the Sun Belt's really good. The West is not. And we'll see what happens with Louisiana losing Billy Napier and their all-time leading passer in Levi Lewis. But I think South Alabama is a team that I like to win the Sun Belt West. That's out there in the 6-1 range.
Adam Burke at Skating Tripods doing a great job covering all things baseball for us, trade deadline day, as well as college football. Adam, thanks as always for the time. We'll get to talk on Sunday here with the Run Line, 8 to 10 Eastern on VSiN. Thanks, pal.
Absolutely, guys. Have a good night.
You can also check out our college football betting guide. Discounted $175. That gets you the college and pro football betting guides along with full VSiN access all the way through the Super Bowl. VSiN.com/subscribe.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.